podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to the Paddock and the Pavilion, the pod that focuses on two sports. On that point, I would love to hear from you to find out what you like about the series as we approach our third anniversary. Email the Paddock and the Pavilion at gmail.com or message me via Twitter, Facebook or Instagram. On today's show, we are back with cricket after our recent Royal Ascot episodes. On Thursday, the 13th of July, Major League Cricket, a new exciting T20 Franchise tournament, is due to blast off at the Grand Prairie Stadium in Dallas. In this podcast, I spoke to Tom Dunmore, Major League Cricket's Vice President of Marketing and Communications, who gave an in-depth insight into this exciting new cricket tournament, which has attracted global stars the like of Kieron Pollard, Rashid Khan, Trent, Boult, Quinton de Kock and Faf du Plessis. If you didn't know anything about Major League Cricket, you will do so after this podcast. Thanks for joining me on the Paddock and the Pavilion, Tom.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, Stephen.
So, USA Cricket, Major League Cricket, why now?
Well, I think it's been a long time coming. People have talked about cricket in America for quite a long time. In fact, we did have high-profile cricket in America back in the 19th century. There was a lot of great cricket played here. It was more popular than baseball until the Civil War. And there were great players that continued to come out of America for quite some decades, even after that. Not to get into all the esoteric history, but players like Bart King and others that came over to England and demolished some batting lineups. So there's some history to it. It is a bat and ball sport country, of course. Baseball won that battle in the 19th century. But what's changed over the last couple of decades are the demographics of the country. The expat population from cricket-loving countries has exploded. Primarily from South Asia, especially India, and that's provided a base of a very large number of cricket fans. There are different estimates out there, but there's no doubt there's probably at least 10 million fans of cricket in the US, perhaps more. All the numbers support that. So we know now that there's a massive base of fans here. When you also combine the changes in cricket, obviously the T20 landscape has transformed the sport, made it more commercially viable. Obviously a shorter form of the game that's easier to introduce and host matches for, as well as the fact that you can bring the world's best players to America now with a T20 franchise league. And that is not something that would have been as easy to do in past decades, but now it's really set up to do that and bring over some of the top players to Major League Cricket, which is what we're doing. So when you combine sort of the changed global cricket landscape, the changed demographics of America, I think also general interest in different sports has grown in America too. It's not just about the big four sports anymore. We've obviously seen football, soccer break through here, but also F1. There's Major League Rugby here. There are other sports on the rise too, and that's sort of another function of changing culture and dynamics of how people consume sport and consume media and can follow it on the internet, which again was hard to do decades ago. If newspapers weren't printing the cricket scores, how would people know what the cricket scores were? Now you can get as much cricket as you want in America. I subscribe to Willow TV, which has 2 TV channels, 24 hours showing all of the cricket. I can watch the Ashes live and really any event. So it's easy to follow the sport. So I think there's a number of factors that have converged to make the timing feel right for this venture.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the 19th century. I'm not going to labour on it, but I looked up and the first international cricket match was played between the USA and Canada in 1844. England's first international cricket match was against the USA in 1859, and I looked on the USA Cricket. England did win the game. England got 156, and we bowled the Americans out for 38 and 54. But not to labour on the 19th century, you talked about the changes in America, building up to Major League Cricket. Before I talk to you about your own cricketing background, you had minor league cricket for a couple of seasons.
Yeah, minor league cricket is really important here. And, there's a lot of talk about franchise cricket, obviously, and what it's doing. And, a lot of people that worry about what franchise cricket does. But in our case, really what we're doing is quite different than just a pop-up franchise league. We've, as part of our plans, part of our commitment to cricket in America, we have created a development pathway, and that's minor league cricket at its sort of apex of producing players and giving them a chance for consistent competition over a summer-long tournament on improved facilities. That's obviously one of the big challenges here, that America in the past did not have a nationwide consistent competition for players to take part in, and the facilities were quite poor across a lot of the country. A lot of AstroTurf wickets and surfaces that weren't conducive to developing players that can play international cricket. So we introduced minor league cricket a couple of years ago. 26 teams take part, 150 to 200 matches each season over 8 to 10 weeks. So it's a pretty, significant competition. That's all across the country. Teams travel around. We have regional divisions and conferences like most American sports do to regionalize the travel a bit. But it's given this, this opportunity for players to get that consistent level of play. It's a high quality competition. The players are, many players with first class cricket experience who have played international cricket, as well as the top domestic, developed talent, younger players coming through. There's a really good crop of young players developing as well. And now they have the chance to get coaching, to be mentored by a Liam Plunkett, for example, who's out playing for the Philadelphians in that league and will play in Major League Cricket too. So it's a chance for them to see professionals as well, the younger players, up close and see how they prepare and practice. And that's something we haven't had here in this country in the past. So it's really a massive step for the sport, and that feeds into Major League Cricket. Dozens of those players are going to take part in Major League Cricket this summer. And it gives us that pathway, because we can't produce a team that can compete with the very best in the world without that pathway of development. And that's the goal, to have a USA team that, at least in white ball cricket, can compete at the highest level and play the best teams, host the best teams. And for that, we have to have a domestic player development pipeline.
To get a player's perspective on minor league cricket, I caught up with former South African under-19s international Andries Gous, who is set to play for Washington Freedom in Major League Cricket. Do you believe the 2 seasons of the minor league cricket will help the American-based players in their preparations for Major League Cricket?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think there's still a massive step up between Major League and minor league. So yeah, hopefully it does help us a little bit. But I do think there will be a massive step up for us to take. So hopefully we'll be able to adjust to the intensity and the skill level of the international guys.
For medium to long term, it must be a big benefit to young cricket enthusiasts and players in America.
Yeah, 100%. It's a big attraction at this moment. We've been getting calls a lot from all over the world, basically, for people to come to America to play cricket. So yeah, it's like I said, it's a massive attraction for everyone that's looking to, even if small tournaments that's happening in America, you've been getting a lot of calls to see if they can get into those and everything.
And is that why you moved across yourself from South Africa?
Yeah, I think for me it was, yes, the cricket, but it was more life after cricket. It was sort of, I just wanted to give the best chance for for my family. At that time I still had a small son. Now I've got a young daughter as well. So I just think the prospects for them after when I'm done and their life going forward will be better in the US than in South Africa.
Just go back and ask you about your own cricketing background before we expand the conversation to Major League Cricket. What's your own background in cricket?
Yeah, I grew up in England. I've been in the US for a very long time now, a quarter of a century almost. But, I grew up in Brighton, about 5 minutes from the ground in Hove there. And, I was a member of Sussex as a kid. I think it was like 10 quid for the season or something. And you could just go in and out as much as you wanted with your little badge, whatever they gave us. And that was great. So I used to walk up and down, from my house to go watch Sussex play. And we weren't very good in the 90s when I was growing up. Unfortunately, though, I love watching them, but it wasn't the golden era that we had as soon as I left the country in the early 2000s when Sussex finally won the county championship for the first time in our history. So bad timing for me. But anyway, I played in the school and just loved cricket growing up. Watched England, and again, not the best era for English cricket either, the 90s, but watch us get hammered by the Australians enough, which now I work with a bunch of Australians, so it was rather poor timing yesterday. On a side note, when I arrived at our stadium, right as the last over was being bowled in the Test match with about 6 Australians there, so that was rather poor timing for me. But anyway, yeah, love cricket. Obviously, moving to America wasn't too much cricket to watch or play here for a long time, so just sort of watched what was happening. And I happened to live in Indianapolis when the mayor decided to build a cricket ground there that was intended and did end up being an ICC quality pitch that to host international cricket on, and hosted some regional qualifiers and so forth. So got a little bit involved, just helping out as one of the few, people that understood international cricket in Indianapolis. And then when Major League Cricket started, just got the chance to be part of the project. And I'd worked in different sports in the US on the marketing side, particularly. So had a mix of sort of knowing American sport marketing along with, knowing cricket as well. So came together well to help try to bring this project to life now. And hopefully my kids will now have cricket grounds that they can go to and watch cricket when they're growing up, which, is something we haven't really had in the US, but it will be fantastic if we can keep growing it across the country here.
Must have been a tough day yesterday being around all those Australians then.
It was phenomenally poor timing. I arrived in Dallas. I watched the match on the plane as much as I could with the poor Wi-Fi streaming. And I was listening to it on my Uber ride over to the stadium, and walked into a room full of Australians right when the winning runs were scored. So painful, but great Test cricket. A really great match, and much better than the last Ashes, which I also watched with most of my colleagues when we were just getting smashed with no hope of any glimmer of joy. So at least they're making it entertaining these days.
They certainly did that. Let's move on to Major League Cricket. For listeners, can you let us know some of the key points, when it's being played, where it's being played, how many teams, what's the format, that sort of information? Yeah.
So all starts July 13th, inaugural match. There are 6 teams taking part. The first match is in Dallas. Most of the matches are in Dallas. We've built a cricket stadium there. We have converted a baseball stadium to a cricket stadium, which took a lot of work, about a $20 million investment. Obviously, it meant expanding the playing surface, putting in a proper cricket wicket, which went in last autumn and has been seeded and so forth. Meant having to move a lot of stands because obviously when you expand the playing area, we had to demolish a lot of seats and move things. But it's a great location in kind of the middle of the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area. very accessible, 7,200 seat venue, so a good size, not kind of oversized, but we're going to fill it for opening night. It's going to be a really tremendous atmosphere. Texas Super Kings will play the Los Angeles Knight Riders, so you can see the IPL connections there. We do have 3 teams that are owned by IPL teams. Those two and MI New York being the other one, and then we have 3 teams that are majority owned by US investors as well, which is a nice combination. We have the Washington Freedom, the Seattle Orcas, and the San Francisco Unicorns, which are all fantastic American names for teams in my opinion. 2 of them are partnered with Australian state cricket entities to kind of provide the cricket expertise. So Cricket New South Wales is partnered with Washington Freedom, and Cricket Victoria is partnered with San Francisco. So they obviously run teams in the Big Bash, and as well as everything else that they do. So they're able to bring that experience, their coaches and so forth, to them.
Were they important, the connections? Were they important, the connections?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, again, we don't have a professional cricket landscape here. So from the beginning, it was important to have the best coaches, the best, organizations that run top cricket teams to make sure they come in and do a first-class job. The cricket has to be good, right? Like it's all well and good to put all this together, but if the cricket's not good, if the pitches aren't good, if the players aren't well prepared, people are going to see through it pretty quickly. It is a sophisticated cricket audience here. People that follow cricket here love cricket. They're generally from cricket-loving countries, and they've grown up with the sport. So they're going to sniff it out quickly if it's not great cricket. So having that expertise, we feel it's a great combination to have a mix of IPL teams and then Australian cricket entities as well, because that brings some different perspectives to it too, which is a bit different than some of the other T20 franchise leagues that are fully IPL owned, for example. So we're a little bit different in that regard, and we think that suits who we are in America and how we want to develop this for the long term. In the long run, each team will have its own stadium in its own city. That's going to take some time, but there are plans in motion in each of the locations. Right now, only Texas will be playing home matches this year. That will change in the future. We're also doing some matches in North Carolina this year at a small kind of boutique venue. There's a great cricket population out there in North Carolina. So we feel like if we can do a sort of tremendous proof of concept this year with some great matches, good crowds, great players coming, those teams are able to bring some of the top players in T20 cricket over for 3 weeks. We'll be able to show what we can do here, and then we can expand on it in future seasons.
And the pitches, are they drop-in pitches then?
No, they're fully grown-in pitches. So these are dedicated cricket stadiums. We don't play any other sports there. So we have a curator. Lead curator is David Agnew, who has done a lot of these pitches around the world, including in the CPL. So he's from Australia, and obviously he's worked out there too. So we have invested a lot of time and money on proper cricket pitches that should obviously we haven't played on them yet, but fully confident they'll play well. And they're dedicated cricket venues. We don't intend to play any other sport, that's part of our commitment. We're not playing in baseball stadiums. We're not just dropping in pitches. We are doing this for the long term with dedicated venues for each team.
And will there be floodlit games as well as daytime games?
Yep. So most of our matches actually will be in the evenings. It's hot in Texas. Right now it's about 36, 37 degrees Celsius outside, and it's not even the top of the day, plus it's very humid. So evening matches are certainly preferable. We have some afternoon doubleheaders sort of unavoidably to fit everything in. But most of the matches will be under the lights in Texas and North Carolina. And then, they're going to be great atmospheres in the evening when it cools off a little bit. And, it'll look great out there.
You said 6 teams. How many matches altogether, and when's the final?
19 matches. It's a round robin format, so everyone plays each other once. Top 4 teams advance, and then it's your sort of IPL style playoffs, where you have the slightly complex, structure of the challenger matches and the qualifier matches leading up to the final, which will be on July 30th back in Dallas. So we play one weekend in Dallas, Thursday to Tuesday. We have a rest day. Then we're in North Carolina, Thursday to Monday or Tuesday again, and then a rest day, and then the playoffs that last weekend of July back in Dallas.
Will we be able to watch some of this on TV in the UK?
Yep, 100%. We have not announced the international broadcasters yet, but it will be accessible, very accessible on a familiar platform for UK viewers.
You've certainly attracted some world-class T20 players. Kieron Pollard, Quentin de Kock, Rashid Khan, Jason Roy. You've mentioned Liam Plunkett, former England World Cup winning star. How did you manage to do that?
I think, to be honest, of all the things we've done, getting the top players here was actually not the hardest thing in some ways. We're able to be quite competitive financially with other T20 leagues outside the IPL. It's a short tournament, which probably helps too. It's a 3-week window. Obviously, we're also playing in the Northern Hemisphere, so we're not competing with as many other places as the Southern Hemisphere, which is quite crowded now in our winter. We obviously have England and the Caribbean, but the CPL follows us, and we're always going to have a conflict with the English summer. That's just unavoidable if you want to play in the American summer. But again, it's a short tournament, so they can do different things in different countries. There's a competition in Canada as well after a couple of the players I think are going to go and play in, and then the Caribbean. So you can have a nice kind of journey across this side of the hemisphere for the summer. It's attractive to play in America. It's different. You get to come out here and play somewhere that's totally different than playing in Pakistan or India. And although there are tons of cricket fans here, a star player can walk around Dallas probably without getting mobbed and kind of enjoy it. Maybe do a couple of days in Miami or New York on the way in or out and enjoy the sights of America. So it's quite appealing, I think, for players to come here. They're excited to help build the sport here. I think everyone realizes that if cricket cracks America, it's good for everybody, good for the global sport to grow and to have new opportunities as well. We haven't really cracked a new country in cricket for quite some time as a sport. So, if we can set an example of how to do it here, hopefully it could follow in some other places as well. The connections as well, of course, through the IPL teams and the Australian entities involved with each of the clubs, each of the teams obviously helps too, because they're able to bring some players that play in their other leagues and other teams and just kind of follow how it works now in T20 franchise cricket. So that was all quite well set up, really, for players to come and take part.
And how many overseas players will be in the final 11s?
It's a maximum of 6.
So how do you think the American-based players will fare in the 6 teams?
I think people will be quite surprised at the quality of players that are domestic. There's really a good set of players that play at a high level, and I think we'll see some come through and make a name for themselves. There are some younger players that are required to be in the squad as well, which is great. So even I don't know yet how much they'll play, but it's tremendous experience for them to be alongside, a Faf du Plessis or whoever, and see, and learn from those types of players. So yeah, I think we'll see people surprised at the quality, and B, that that's a great learning opportunity and development opportunity for the US-based players.
Presumably the players that play for the USA national team will be playing in the tournament.
Yeah, quite a large number of them will be taking part. I believe there are 16 players that have been capped by the USA national team that will take part, that have been drafted as well. So yeah, there'll be a really good number of those players.
The Mumbai New York team look very strong with Pollard, Trent, Boult, Nicholas Pooran, Kagisa Rabada. Yeah,
it's not a bad lineup. Several of the teams have very strong lineups. Pretty much all the players are announced now. There's a few players still to be announced that will add to that on a couple of the teams. But yeah, it's a really good and exciting set of players on each of the teams. And it's going to be cool to see them in all in one spot in Texas. You know, I'm sure they'll be going to the rodeo or getting some barbecue and wearing some cowboy hats. And it's going to be fun to see all of that take place in Texas.
Back to Andries to find out how much he is looking forward to playing Major League Cricket. You've played lots of first-class cricket, Abu Dhabi T10. You've played for the South African under-19 Test side. How excited are you about playing Major League Cricket in America?
Yeah, very excited. It's been a while coming. It was supposed to be last year, and unfortunately, COVID just pushed it back by a year. So it's good that it's finally here, and just to see all the players that's coming, it's just really exciting.
Yeah, you've got some legends of T20 cricket playing. Rashid Khan, Kieron Pollard.
Yeah, it doesn't get better than that. I think our team, we've got people that's incredible. Basically all the teams are so stacked. It's going to be really good.
Yeah, who are the international players that you're going to be playing with at the Washington Freedom?
Yeah, so we've signed Andries Gous, Marco Jansen, Hazaranga from Sri Lanka, Akil Hussain from West Indies, and then we've got a couple Aussie boys, Ben Dwarshes, Moses Enrique, Josh Felipe, and then Adam Mull from New Zealand as well.
You've got some interesting people to keep wicket to if you don the gloves.
It's going to be interesting.
So you think you'll be playing as a wicketkeeper?
Yeah, I think so. It all, like I said, it all depends on the balance of the team, whether or not which overseas guys. Since you can only play 6, it all depends on the balance of the team. So, but hopefully, I get to keep a few games.
Yeah, you must be excited about keeping to Henrik Nortje.
Yeah, so me and Andries, we grew up playing against each other. So we're the same age in South Africa. We played all our years together. So it's going to be fun playing. I played with him in Abu Dhabi as well, so it's going to be fun seeing him again and keeping to him.
Well, he's certainly one of the fastest bowlers in the world, and you've got one of the fastest bowlers in the world, or former fast bowlers, as your bowling coach, Dale Steyn.
What a legend! You probably won't agree with me, but for me, he's the best bowler ever to bowl. So it's obviously the English and the South Africans will differ a lot, but yeah, he's an absolute legend.
So are you confident the tournament will be a success?
Yeah, I think so. It has to be a success. But I do believe that the right things are in place now for it to be successful. It'll be interesting to see whether or not the next year onward, whether the games become more games or does it stay at a 5-match round robin tournament. So, but yeah, I do think it is exciting. And one thing, it's always, everybody who plays cricket, franchise cricket across the world, they've been to everywhere in the country, but nobody actually has played in America, and everybody wants to travel to America. So I think that's also like a bargaining chip that the Major League has. Is everybody will probably want to play in this Major League because it's a place where they've never been before.
And crowd-wise, you think you'll get backing from it's in Dallas, isn't it?
Yeah, so in America itself, but in Dallas, there's a big Southeast Asian community. So I think they will be quite a decent crowd. I'm not obviously don't know how many people will come out, but I do think that the support will be there, especially when we go to Morrisville in North Carolina. That it's a smaller ground with not as much capacity, but that ground will definitely be full.
And have they got practice facilities where they can meet up at the ground before the tournament starts?
Yeah. Most of the teams, or all the teams, practicing in Houston, which is about a 3-hour drive from Dallas. There's a big training facility we have there with 5 or 6 pitches. So most of the teams will be practicing out there. We've worked really hard the last 2, 3, 4 years to develop, first class training pitches and, the type of quality needed. There's certainly more work to do around the country. We know that. It takes time, especially in a country this size, to get facilities around the country. But certainly come a long way the last few years. And there'll be a short training camp. I think that's always the way with these T20 leagues. There'll be about a week of training camp before the tournament gets underway.
Yeah, starting in 2023. When did the sort of beginnings of Major League Cricket first get discussed? How many years are we going back?
Quite some time, 4 or 5 years. The agreement that the Major League Cricket made with USA Cricket was cemented in 2019. So even before the pandemic, which obviously also slowed things down a bit, but it was a long-term vision that the ICC had a big role into to really take the sport to a new level in the US. And that included some changes at the administrative level with USA Cricket, and then this agreement that we have with USA Cricket, where we are the commercial partner committed to growing the sport and developing the major league, exclusively sanctioned for T20 franchise cricket. But in return, we're making large commitments on what we're doing, from building stadiums to running the minor league and developing players and so forth. So it's a very holistic vision of how you can leverage the attraction of a commercial league to build the sport as a whole, which again I think is probably different than most of the T20 leagues around the world, where we're not just grafting on top of an existing cricket infrastructure. If you think of the 100, for example, we're really doing the opposite. We're building the infrastructure so that we can have a successful league in the long run, and using the opportunity, the commercial opportunity of the league to make commitments to build the sport, facilities, coaches, players as a whole.
Talking about the 100 then, are you not in direct competition, and will the programme not clash with the 100 in future years? It isn't this year.
Yeah, it's tricky. There's no doubt about that. We both play in the same summer, so there are bound to be conflicts across the countries that play at the same time. We try to minimize those. We're obviously in touch with our counterparts at other leagues and other boards. So we're trying our best to manage the calendars. It will change a bit year to year depending on World Cups and things like that as well. Certainly want to minimize, direct overlap, but at the end of the day, we want to have a professional cricket league here. We want to have the best players, and so does the 100, I'm sure. And so, we do our best to minimize it. But there are bound to be some overlaps at certain points, I'm sure.
Certainly playing over 3 weeks, you should be able to get players to play through the whole tournament. Yeah.
I'm sure, there's always things that happen in cricket, right? But for the most part, we'll look to expand the competition in the future once we have more grounds around the country. So when we get to 3, 4, 5 venues, we're likely to go to a longer competition so that teams can play in different parts of the country, and you might be looking at a 5-week season or something in a couple of years potentially.
And could you have more teams then as well?
Eventually, yeah. We want to get this right first with the 6 that we have. But there's a ton of interest. There are some very big cities with big, particularly South Asian expat audiences that don't have teams right now. You think of a Chicago or an Atlanta, for example. Those are places as big and with as big, populations that could support this as some of the cities that we have. But that's in the future. It's not something we're looking to do overnight. We want to get it right with what we have first.
And is also the aim to get more young boys and girls playing cricket in America?
Yeah, and that's happening. There are a lot of academies. We have about 25 affiliated Major League Cricket academies around the country in all different places. So those are kids playing from the ages of 8 and under up to 18. They're starting to travel around. I think there's a group coming over to England actually this summer to play a few matches and train with a couple of the counties, things like that. So there's a lot of that happening currently. Facilities are the challenge. So, we need to get more and better facilities for players to develop around the whole country. But there are a lot of tournaments now. We have MLC Junior Championships, bring all the top players together to compete several times a season in the big sort of hubs that we have. There's a lot of grassroots passion for it. At the moment, it's largely, it is largely children of expats, I would say, that are playing. That's an important generation for us, though. Kids that are born in America to parents that love cricket. It's important that they learn to love cricket too and play it and have that chance to play it. We can't just assume they'll remain cricket fans just because they have cricket-loving parents, right? They need to experience the sport, play it and watch it. That's a big generation to get. You're talking about millions of kids. So that's certainly the primary group at the moment. It's great to start looking to expand that, start to get it in schools and so forth, and introduce some other groups that aren't familiar to it. But we also have to be realistic and just, at least make sure we get good facilities, good participation growing amongst the core demographic, and then aim to expand from there.
And any plans in the future for a women's tournament?
Yeah, we're not, as MLC, we're not sanctioned to run a women's competition directly, but we're very supportive of growing the women's side. We've provided a lot of resources and coaching and so forth to some of the younger players that are developing, and provide our facilities to them, particularly the USA, under 19 women and so forth. So we're highly supportive of that. I think there's a tremendous opportunity for women's cricket in America. Women's cricket is obviously fast developing globally, but I think if you talk about where you could catch up fastest, there's probably a good opportunity on the women's side for the US. We've got clearly a massive population. We've got a history of tremendous women's athletic performance. If you look at football or tennis or, any of the major global sports, golf and so forth, sport is embedded in and partly legally as well due to, Title IX and college requirements. There's a pipeline of women's athletic talent. And if some of that could transition to cricket, you'd have some tremendous athletes playing cricket. Again, it's going to take time. None of this is an overnight success story. It will take a bit of time to get there, but we're very supportive of that and want to do what we can to help the women's game grow.
And to the future, in 2024, the men's T20 World Cup is being played in the Caribbean and the USA. I think you've got 15 matches, I think.
That's right. Yeah. So we co-hosted, across the Caribbean and the US. ICC has not announced all the details yet, but believe that's coming a bit later in the year. But yeah, tremendously exciting to have that here. It's clearly a really great trajectory to have Major League Cricket launch this year, have the World Cup coming next year, and that will get us some breakthrough. I think there's some more general audiences too, because Americans know what a World Cup is, even if they don't understand cricket yet. We saw that with football, soccer in the 90s here, having the Men's World Cup in 94 and the Women's World Cup in 99. That took that sport to a new level in the US. And we think we can do something similar with cricket. And we hope to host, not just next year's, but future competitions as well, especially as we add more facilities and once we've got 5-6 world-class stadiums, potentially could we host an ODI World Cup in the next decade? That type of thing would be fantastic.
You have had some ODIs in America, haven't you? I think India play the West Indies.
Yep. There's a ground in Florida where that's taken place, and we do think we'll be able to host a lot of high-level cricket here in the US once we have these stadiums online, including the one in Dallas that's going to open next month. And as the USA gets stronger, obviously we want to host USA matches against top tier, full member nations, and do that consistently. We're going to have a bunch of cricket stadiums and a short tournament, so it's certainly in our interest to be able to host more international cricket throughout the year. And you can play quite deep into the year in Texas. It's not a short summer here. It's warm deep into the year and early in the year as well, and you don't get much rain, so a good place to play. Same in California, obviously, and we're able to host cricket. We had Ireland play the US in Florida in December a couple of years ago, so it's really a year-round cricket nation, which presents some interesting opportunities as well.
Well, teams could go to USA on the way to the Caribbean, couldn't they, to play a couple of matches?
Yeah, I think it actually works really nicely with the Caribbean and the opportunity for us to grow the sport in this side of the world and share those opportunities. Like the Ireland example, they played in the West Indies as well as in America on that swing. So I think we'll be able to see a lot more of that, and that'll be good for the West Indies as well, because hopefully it will attract teams to travel over here more often, and it will only make sense for them to do a stop in the Caribbean as well.
Plus, it could also lead to cricket being in the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles.
Yeah, we're pretty optimistic about that. There's nothing official yet, but we feel quite optimistic and hoping for some good news there soon. But that, again, just adds to that trajectory of Major League Cricket, World Cup, and then the Olympic Games in LA, and that's one of the locations for one of our teams as well. So, of course, we're working on a stadium in that area that would be a natural fit to host matches for that. So, we feel pretty good that that's potentially going to happen.
Well, that can certainly only grow the great game of cricket. But before we go, Tom, can you remind us of the date of the Major League Cricket competition and the first game and who's playing?
Yeah, all starts on July 13th in Dallas at Grand Prairie Stadium. Texas Super Kings against the LA Knight Riders. So a lot of star players who play for the Knight Riders and the Super Kings in the IPL and other leagues are coming over for that. Stay tuned for the broadcast details and the streaming details, but it'll be widely available. It's going to be a great broadcast, 24 plus camera production. It'll look great. We're going to have a full crowd that night under the floodlights. It will be late UK time, but get up early in the morning and watch the recording or whatever. There'll be some matches that will start a little bit earlier in the evening, UK time as well. So there'll be some chances to see it sort of 9-10 o'clock at night for several of the games.
I bet you can't wait to get started, though.
It'll be yeah. I still look at the list of players we're announcing, and I think they're going to be here in 3 weeks playing cricket in the middle of here in Texas. Is pretty cool. So it's going to be something special when we see that.
It's a long way for you from going along to Hove and watch Sussex.
It's a little bit different than a few seagulls in deck chairs and Ian Salisbury turning some pretty good leg spin. Actually, he was a good bowler, but. It's a little bit different here in Texas, but that's the fun of it. I've been fortunate to work in sport here for a while, and Americans do sport so well, entertainment, and we want to bring a bit of that hybrid of American sport entertainment to the great game of cricket, and see what happens. We'll learn some things this year. I'm sure we'll improve on some things for next year. We're not going to get it 100% right, but I think we've got the ingredients for a pretty special competition, starting this year and then just growing from there.
Well, it sounds like you've got everything under control. thank you very much for joining me on the Paddock and the Pavilion.
Thanks so much for having me.
Sports Social Podcast Network.